From WKRG Plus, your local election headquarters, this is Politics with Pete.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition as we talk about Mobile's mayor's race, the election coming up on August 26th. And we're joined right now by Barbara Drummond, one of our candidates for mayor. Barbara, thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been in the state legislature now for a decade, I think.
Not
close.
quite.
Not
close,
quite. Okay,
close.
We're getting there. A couple of sessions at least. Tell me what you've learned up there in Montgomery, about being a political leader and how that's prepared you maybe to be mayor of Mobile.
Well, I really think my if you say education really started before I went to Montgomery. I've always been a person who served other folks from when I was at the county, the city, and of course at the state it capped it off. But you know that the city of Mobile as well as Mobile County are all instruments of the state. It all starts there, from funding for education, for funding for programs at the city, for laws. It all starts in Montgomery. So I think I gained a greater knowledge of what I want to see in my city from Montgomery, because there are a number of issues that we tackle in Montgomery, and I'm one of those folks. They say if you mention Mobile, she'll fight hard. And that's kind of me. Because I just think Mobile is probably the best part of the state. I know there are others who will disagree with me, but they know I'll fight vigorously for Mobile. South Alabama is home for me. I'm a native. I am Dorothy. Never ever wanted to go anywhere else. There's no place like home. And I just think that Mobile's better days are ahead of her.
In Montgomery, have you learned how to deal with other legislators to get where you want to go? And the mayor of Mobile really needs to do that. You set the tone, and the mayor's the leader of the city, but the decisions are made with the council, and that relationship is important, right? Well,
Peter, it's very interesting. That's a very interesting question. Someone asked me that recently. You realize there are 104 folks that I have to convince when I do a piece of legislation. And I remember the first year when I was in the legislature, they said, oh, you probably won't get a bill passed for a couple of years. I got 2 passed that year. And all of them were dealing with the city of Mobile, from helping Mobile sort of deal with the blight that we see in our city, to make that process a little bit easier for government, because it's our image. But I've learned a whole lot from dealing with folks. If I can work with 104, and not to mention the Senate, which is 35 senators, I can work with 7 council members. It's all about building relationships. And that's why I think I'm so perfectly suited now, because I have built relationships wherever I went. I have federal relationships right now because of state government. I chair our Alabama House Democratic Caucus. And that's not a position that you just gain because you're there. It's a position because you have relationships and you know how to maneuver the process. And most importantly, you know how to work with other folks. And you know that in order to get anything done in the state of Alabama, I'm not one of these folks. I work across the aisle. So I know how to work with folks. So I think that may be a challenge on some issues, but I know that we all want the very best. And as long as I know that, we will work toward what we need to do for Mobile.
Back in the day, you were a reporter with the Mobile Press Register, and I've always thought that, a reporter who's out there, pounding the pavement, the city possibly better than a lot of people. How about that experience of being a reporter and what that's brought to your knowledge base of the city?
Well, I reported on government, so that's why I think I understand how government works so perfectly. But I think the thing that gave me more of a better understanding while I was at the Press Register, I wrote a column for that paper called It's My Turn. I wrote that column for about 10, 15 years. Even after I left the Press Register, they said, Barbara, the column was so popular, will you continue to write that column? And the reason I was so happy to continue, because it was about everyday people, of what we're dealing with every day. And I find that that's a voice that's missing today, that we're not dealing with people. When I went to Montgomery in 2014, that was one of the first things that I learned, that government has forgotten about people. We have gotten so entrenched in our parties on the left and on the right. Nobody's is thinking about the folks in the middle who sent you there. So I know that's a value. And when I was at the Press Register, I dealt with people and people issues. And I'm going to give you my most favorite story, because it's one of the things that I think that is going to define Mobile for the future, and that's our history. And Mobile is such a historic town. I remember when I was at the Press Register, I got the opportunity to interview Mama Eva. And she was the daughter of Cudjoe Lewis in Africatown. I remember sitting on her porch, which was just a shotgun house, and we were, as she said, come on and help me pick peas. I'd never done that before. But I sat on that porch interviewing her, and I had my recorder going. That was the most enriching interview that I think I have ever done, never ever realizing that one day they would find this ship that has the blood, sweat, and the tears, but also, I think, the tourism future for Mobile.
Yeah, you're pleased with what's been going on there the last couple of years.
And I think we can do more. I think that is something that will define us, not just in the United States, but I think people will come from all over the world into Mobile. It's a tourism mecca. And so when you talk about what did I find when I was a reporter, I dealt with people. I always kept people first and people issues. And I think that's why I was successful there at the Press Register. And when I made the transition to county government, and that was because I was a single mom who had an Azalea Trail daughter. And she was doing everything. And again, people. I was in Wedowee, Alabama, and I missed a function. And she said it was okay, but I didn't. And so I was a single mom, and I went on and said, I've got to find a 9 to 5, because as you know, when you're in the media, you're not 9 to 5.
Yes.
You're wherever the story happens or whatever you do. So I went to county government and went to the other side, and it has been very fulfilling for me, because it's given me a greater understanding of what service is all about.
Well, let's talk about maybe your time then. You were at the county, and then you were with the city and under Mayor Sam Jones. What did you learn from him, maybe, and what do you take from that 8 years, what went right and maybe what didn't go right?
Well, I think I learned that you can have your own voice. I tell people, at first when I got elected, I would walk into a room and people didn't see me, they saw Sam Jones. I always told them, I'm cuter. But Barbara has her own mind. I learned a lot of leadership skills, and let me tell you one that I think is so important. Not very many people know this, but Sam Jones landed Airbus when he was sick. I learned how to have the strength that when you love your city so much, you'll go the extra mile to make sure you do the very best. Because it's under that administration we landed Airbus and Austal and ThyssenKrupp, and I learned the value of working across the aisle, because Bob Riley was the governor at that time. And I saw how having that team spirit made us so much stronger and so much better. It was at that time that we learned to have a regional approach to economic development. At one time, everybody was trying to do their own thing, from the city, the county, and even the state. And we realized, wait a minute, we're spinning our wheels. Not only did we unite Mobile and the state, but we also united Baldwin County. So we now look at things as a region. Mobile is strong because we now realize that our success is our ability to work together.
What do we do? He brought up Baldwin County, and we've got a lot of people leaving Mobile, going to Baldwin County. We have a lot of people in Baldwin County working in Mobile, but then going and living in Baldwin County and spending money there. What do we do to stop this flow to Baldwin County? I
think that we need to create a whole lifestyle change in Mobile. As I was saying before, I had a young lady who moved to Baldwin County. Well, actually, she moved to Saraland, her and her family. And she didn't go there just because, but she could not find sustainable housing in Mobile. We've got to do something about sustainable and affordable housing in Mobile. We've got to make our neighborhoods much more attractive to families, that they want to come in, and that it's not always about the money of what they're making on a job, but the lifestyle. Mobile is a historic city. Always when I go to Savannah, I think of Mobile. We're older. And when I go to Savannah, as soon as you step on those pavements, you know that you're in a historic town. That city tells its story through its history. I think that's a mecca. I mentioned Africatown, but we've got history throughout Mobile, all the way down. I tell people I'm a tree hugger. I know history of the trees. I go over on Carolina Avenue to the oldest tree, but that's rich history. We've got to change the lifestyle so that a young family will be able to afford and have the ability to have the recreational opportunities. And I'm not just talking about parks. We need world-class, state-of-the-art museums. We need to tell our story because that's a draw for us. We need to change the lifestyle in Mobile. And number one in changing that lifestyle, we've got to deal with violence. Crime is a big thing, and I know that some say that it's down, and I'm sure that it is, but the perception that people have of your city is the crime that is being committed. And I was telling somebody the other day, a young person who challenged me, he said, "What is there for me to do here?" And this guy's 24 at USA. And I looked at him and I couldn't give him a good answer. He's right. We've got to start pouring resources into our young people. I'm a big believer, whatever you put in is what you get out. If we put nothing in, you get nothing out. And what we've been seeing lately truly epitomizes that an idle mind is a devil's workshop. We've got to start pouring more into even nonprofits that are working with kids. I remember when I was at the county, we had 3 YMCAs in the city. We have 1 now, and they're struggling. We had a Boys and Girls Club that had a bigger contribution from the city. Now it has a smaller. We've got to start pouring resources and giving young people a voice because they're the ones that the future. That's why we've got to do a lifestyle, that they want to stay here. They want to move back here. They don't want to go to Baldwin County. I don't like that. I love Baldwin County, but I want folks to stay here and feel proud that they're here. I've had people tell me they can't find a house here in Mobile. I go through some of our historic neighborhoods, beautiful architect, but it's so blighted. Mm-hmm. Mobile need to embark upon a revitalization program of those neighborhoods. I was at a school that was dedicating its stadium, and I was sitting there, and other people, they were talking to me, and I wasn't listening. They said, what are you doing? And I said, well, here's a stadium at a school. Across the street was a recreation center. Next to that was a park. Next to that was an elementary school. The thing that was missing was families. We've got to do a lifestyle change so that families will want to come back here and say, this is the place that I want to be. And we've got to stimulate and make opportunities for them. We've got great minds in Mobile, but there are no opportunities. I tell people all the time that when I grew up on Texas Hill. Everybody know my story, but I love Texas Hill and right next to Oakley. And I used to hear as a little girl, how do you prosper in Mobile? They said, oh, you have to be conceived under the azalea bush. I want to burn that azalea bush down. No, I want our young people, when they talk about opportunities, they're talking about economic development, they're talking about cultural enrichment, they're talking about recreational opportunities, and they're talking about affordable housing, and they're talking about clean and safe neighborhoods that they can be proud of and say, this is where I live. That's the city that I see Mobile can be.
What's the city's responsibility toward our school system financially and otherwise?
Well, when you talked about me in Montgomery, I serve right now on the Alabama Trust Fund Committee. So I'm on probably one of the most powerful committees. I think that it's important for the city to partner with the school system. That's a stakeholder that will hold our community back. I didn't mention that earlier, but we want good schools. Now, I think the Mobile County Public School System is making a change, and based upon some of the laws, like I was so ecstatic when I saw the reading and the math scores that are up. These are going to take increment changes, and it's going to take time for us to show, but we've seen improvement in our school system. But I think it's incumbent upon us to help build a pipeline from K through 12 into our workforce to create tomorrow's workers. One of the bills that I helped co-sponsor in the legislature, and I was at the Home Builders not very long ago, and I'm thinking, why am I and another legislator the only legislators here? And then they said, because you are the two who champion this piece of legislation. They want to create an academy here to create a pipeline of plumbers, electricians. That's what I see us that we need to do. When you say the city, we need to partner to get our workforce more healthier so that we can create good industry to come in, and they already have a pipeline of workers. And you do that, like in Baldwin County, they've got the Baldwin Preparatory School.
The new school, yeah.
We need 4.
Right, and we do have programs at the various schools.
We've got a lot of signature academies, which I helped champion just in this past session. I got about $350,000 for BC Rain's aerospace program, but that's not enough. We've got to have a program set up when these kids, all of them aren't going to college. I'd like for them to, but they're not. But once they come out of at K through 12, they could automatically be trained and go into a job to create a pipeline for us. We've got healthcare academies, signature academies, we've got aerospace, we've got shipbuilding, we've got the nucleus is there. We need to expand upon it.
Okay.
And we need 4 of those campuses in Mobile so that we can create that type of culture for the workforce. And it all works in tandem with the 2-year college system. I'm proud of Bishop State. I'm proud to have been on the arm that helped build the manufacturing center, because all of that work hand in hand. And I think that Mobile has finally got that message. I think we're ready for it, just like we did regionalism. I think that we now know the value of K through 12 and the value of Bishop State, which is our 2-year institution. I'm proud of both. Both are changing. Both are getting better. I was one of the ones that fought very hard for the Literacy Act in Montgomery, to the demise of some of my colleagues who say, oh no, don't do this. This is going to stigmatize some children because they'll have to be held back. It's one of the best things that we've done, that and the Numeracy Act, because now we have measurements that our children can aspire to, and they're doing it. We're seeing growth. Now, I won't be happy because we'll always have failing schools, even if they make an A. But I'm happy that most of our schools that were teetering at the bottom have moved up. So we've got to have faith in our school system and do everything that we can to partner with them so that we can make the system better. I'm real proud of this example. We just changed the funding formula for public education in the state. And I served on that committee for 8 months. When we were not in session, I was going to Montgomery, and everybody in Montgomery know if you say Mobile, Barbara's going to perk up. Well, we were sitting there trying to say who's going to get what and how much would they get, because we're now going to focus on the needs of the child. I am proud to say Mobile County got $8.7 million more dollars, and that is going to help us. And we're not just channeling money to them, we're going to be looking for results, because we're going to change education in the state of Alabama. It is the thread that helps us with economic development. It helps us with neighborhood stimulation, and then just bring it down to a personal level. It makes that person who's in a poverty-stricken neighborhood know that their address doesn't define how high they can go. That's why I'm a big education person. So I will do everything I can to improve public education in Mobile. I was on the Yes We Can. We did the first initiative. After all of them had failed, I was one of the folks walking around knocking on doors. And I was not elected at that time. But Mobile is in my heart, and I am proud of what I'm seeing.
All right, we're speaking with Barbara Drummond, candidate for mayor. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to get Barbara's thoughts on crime in the city and what can be done about it. Welcome back. We're speaking with Barbara Drummond, candidate for mayor in Mobile. We're going to talk about crime and policing now, Barbara. And, of course, I think this summer, to the shooting we had at the Sanger, for example, at the Moon Pie Drop a couple of years ago, and it seems we have more of this violence taking place now in public locations. And I think that's one thing that's added to the perception that crime is rampant in the city. What can be done about these mostly young kids, 16, 17 years old, shooting at each other out in public. And it's not just happening in Mobile, it's happening everywhere.
Well, let me just say, in my opinion, it's not just a one thing answer, because police, what they do is police and they arrest and they make sure you follow the laws. I think that this is a problem for the entire community. First, we've got to own it. And then we've got to come up with ways of putting money to give better, safe places and resources to our young people. I believe in my heart, because the little kid that was killed on Ziegler Boulevard, just laying on her couch, and they were after her 16-year-old brother. That one broke my heart. And I have often thought that we need to start coming up with better ways and safe ways of being able to help our young people. They don't have conflict resolution, which means the churches need to be involved, nonprofits need to be involved, and government needs to be involved in putting funds in those areas to help us to mitigate any of those problems. I think our police department needs to be ramped up, I do, and they need to be retrained to be able to deal with those conflicts in those communities. But most of all, I have felt this all along, and I fought against it, but I was outvoted. I truly believe that permitless carry, we started seeing an influx of all of this violence because everybody has a gun now. We've got to look at ways. I know I'm in the legislature, and I know that I can't just overturn permitless carry, but I think that things we can do to mitigate it, like the Sanger shooting. You know, I walked into the State House and there was a huge sign that said no firearms. Why can't we create a law that say there are places you cannot bring a weapon into? And so those are some things that I'm going to be thinking about, but I really think that we've got to start putting more resources back into our young folks. I would like to have a standalone department at the city that not just when we have an incident, not just hire one person, but to give a voice to young people in our city. It will also create a nucleus of those things that we need to change to reach them. It will also be a nucleus for them to get jobs and to get the training we talked about and work on those things so that we can be successful and create viable citizens for tomorrow. And I really truly believe churches have a role, because for me as a kid, I came up in a poverty-stricken neighborhood. I had two parents who were very religious, but everything that I learned about life came out of that church. I mean, I played softball. And it was a church softball team. So I think churches have got to go back into those communities and show these children that they're worth, because we can't get into the households. I wish we could, because that's where the problem starts. But we've got to do everything we can to pour resources into this problem, to let these kids know that they are valued and to give them safe things in safe places.
Switching gears now, Barbara, if you're elected mayor, you're going to be overseeing the conclusion of a couple of big projects in the city. One is the switch of the airport to Brooklyn, and the other is the new Civic Center. What are your thoughts on those two projects? Okay,
let me talk about the airport first, because I've been a proponent. I always have thought about the residents that live around that airport. I actually live around that airport, so I'm talking from my own neighbors. We want to make sure they're taken care and they're safeguarded. But I'm in favor of the airport. I tell this story because it's a true story. It was probably my first encounter of channeling my inner strength politically in Montgomery. They took all the money out of the budget for the airport and the port. And I get a call from one of our senators and say, okay, you're on the education budget and I'm on general fund. You got to get money for the airport. And I'm going, oh, wow, nobody even asked me, give me white notes or whatever. But anyway, I went into this room, and I'll never forget it. It was about 9 o'clock at night in the State House. We were in the basement. And everybody who was around the table, nobody was from South Alabama except me. So that meant I had to fight the hardest. I walked out around midnight and I had $15 million for our airport. That's a true story. So that is what I'm going to do. I talked to someone this morning when I was doing calls, and they were talking about the airport. They didn't want it to move from where it is now, an airport. And I sort of told them the reasoning why. I think it's a good move because it's so strategic to the interstate, and it's going to give us an opportunity to compete with Biloxi and Gulfport and Pensacola. It is going to show that's part of Mobile's future growth, because people now won't have to drive so far. And then we won't be so easily defeated. And hopefully we're going to be attracting new airlines into that area. And so I just think it's going to be wonderful. And you're going to see that area come up. And so I'm happy to inherit that because I already believe in the mission.
Right. How about the Civic Center? What do you think of the plans for the Civic Center?
I like the Civic Center. I wish it had had a theater because I'm an arts person. When I'm not doing politicking, I'm a person who, I'm a Sunday school teacher, so I take my Sunday school class to see the Nutcracker. And so I'm an arts person. I love the symphony, I love the ballet, I love all of those things. So I don't think it will be complete until we get a theater there.
Okay. Staying downtown, how about Amtrak service? It seems like the city's been kind of lukewarm and is really compared to
I'm not one of those.
Okay, you're pro Amtrak.
I'm pro Amtrak.
Okay, you're on board.
I'm on board.
Okay.
Because it opens us up to the rest of the state as well as other parts of the country. If we're going to grow, and especially with the project that we're going to have downtown, I think that it's going to be so wonderful. It is going to wake up that part of Dolphin Street and Water Street. It is going to make that area more walkable, and I'm a biker, so I often ride my bike down there. So I'm excited about all of that. Amtrak is a part of that. I think there's a delicate balance that we do with Amtrak and the port because that's been one of the hindrances that has kept us from doing it. But we need to do everything we can. We talked about changing the lifestyle. We need to do everything we can to make Mobile a city that people want to come to.
We're running short on time. Final question for you is what separates Barbara Drummond from the other candidates?
Barbara Drummond is the trifecta in this election. I have experience in county government, city government, and now in state government. Barbara Drummond knows what doors to knock on to take us to the next level. She is the girl who has the passion and the heart that will never, ever give up. Before we go, I stayed with one bill for 3 years, and everybody said, why did you do that? Because it's going to help our young people.
All right, we got to wrap it up. We're out of time. Barbara, thank you so much for being here. Good luck.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time, everyone.